Well, I decided to look for records that I was listening to actively
Aha.
in the 90s in New York. And it was mostly, well, I'm not sure what to call it, alt rock or indie rock. Just trying to figure out what was more a personal interest of mine and what I could recommend. And I ended up with two bands that are little known because they made some bad decisions.
I didn't have too many, or I didn't buy too many records from the 90s because that was not vinyl wasn't the flourishing medium. So I dug out two things that I think are representative of what the decade has to offer. I think of vinyl and guitars belonging together. So anyway, that's what my choices reflect.
Yeah, I wasn't really buying vinyl in the 90s either. I was one of those morons who went and sold all of his records in 1991. In the last 10 years, I picked up the two records I'm going to talk about today. One of which was really important to me back in the 90s, and one which I didn't discover until the 2000s.
Selection number one, this cheery guy leering at you, is the artwork of Savage Pencil for the band Skullflower. Skullflower, right? Skullflower, Matthew Bauer's project since 1986 or 1987, probably. And this offers up a blistering slab of what you expect and want and consistently get from these guys, which is squalls of really unpleasant noise and pounding drums over just cacophonous guitars with occasional non-lyrical vocal intermittent howls or something. So this record is called Zaman, I believe. Can display it, and it's, of course, sort of a mystery word. Examine would be another possibility, but it's from 1990, so it just slips in and qualifies. Other great recordings, all the stuff from this period, I think, is really great. It's loud and painful. Squall before, but I really meant to. Kind of like getting stung by one of these guys here. So that's item number one. Item number two comes from stateside, and Memphis to be precise. It is the Oblivians, who are three guys who, like the Ramones, all call themselves Oblivion: Jack, Eric, and Greg. They would trade off instruments between songs, uh, bass guitar and drums, and the songs are all short and sweet, or short and nasty, because the sentiment, yeah, is often not too gracious. My favorite here track is probably "Bad Man." I'm a bad man, but I'm too good for you. Uh, sort of encapsulates much of the attitude of their swampy stomping southern punk snottiness. It's got fun sort of liner notes copying the sort of grandiloquent style of the 60s, talking about the hip sound that these guys have. Of course, when it says Oblivion's popular favorites, that probably means, for a select audience of like maybe 1,000 people internationally. Uh, so a well-guarded secret. Solo projects of these guys are also worth checking out. Greg Cartwright, which is the real name of Greg Oblivion, did his main project after this group was The Raining Sound. And he also did a record with Mary Weiss of the Shangri-Las, which was her return to music after decades of silence. Fierce, pounding, pummeling, and sort of ill-tempered. The Skullflower is completely vitriolic and caustic. This is more punk and sort of bad neighborly, but two unpleasant records for unpleasant people.
Thanks, Eric. I have Acetone. Um, this is their self-titled record from 1995. It's their second record. Um, all their records are good. Just seems to be my favorite, along with a covers EP called "I Guess I Would." That's also a close second. This is a very long record, but it's a guaranteed listen in that there's no one like Acetone. They're singular, modern sort of takes on their influences, which are 70s country and folk. Some of the great songwriters like John Prine. And so the singing is not a standout in this case, but it is morose, dreamy, and resigned. And I think that's the part that I gravitate towards. Also, the guitar player sings harmony and provides a chiming, slurred riffery that makes this band distinct. Really, the way the guitars interact. He's doing overdubs on the records, but it's just bass. It's a three-piece bass, guitar, and a super feel drummer that just keeps things just in a great groove the whole time. So it's very relaxing music. Be good in the morning. You might say it's lackadaisical. And they had a string of records that are all now in reissue, and they're hitting their stride. And the bad decision was the songwriter singer committed suicide. So he never lived to reap the benefits of all those great reissues. I happen to have an original pressing, but um, it is available. And second, I have San Francisco Seals, Truth Walks in Sleepy Shadows. And this is really one of Barbara Manning's projects. She's got solo records, and this is probably her best rock band, the San Francisco Seals, but she's also worked with people in New Zealand, some of the Flying Nun artists, to make a record called In New Zealand, and also Stuart Moxham of the Young Marble Giants. But that is a CD only issue. So I would describe this as alt folk punk rock, and it's on Matador. So it was sort of in vogue at the time. What really attracts me to this in general, all her records, it's her voice and her composition. She's a great songwriter. And on this particular one, there's four classic songs. Even though I'm not in the mood to listen to rock very much, these classics bring me back to this record again and again. She sings about undertow, the depths of sorrow, the sea as an analogy, and it's got just the right production. They also do a cover of The Pretty Things, SF Sorrow, which is the rockin' first number. So it's affecting and penetrating. And as far as bad decisions, well, some might consider this too personal, solipsistic, and her live shows are a little bit uneven. But classic record, San Francisco Seals, Truth Walks in Sleepy Shadows.
In 1996 or thereabouts, I was lucky enough to catch the Greyboy Allstars playing at their, I'm not sure if it was, I think it was their home club in San Diego. And, I've seen them any number of times since then. They are one of the most fun, most accomplished jazz ish bands of the last 30 years, I would say. And this was their debut record, West Coast Boogaloo. They were often spoken of as part of the acid jazz movement of the 90s, which kind of meant whatever you wanted it to mean. Stuff that was like hip hop with jazz samples and, funkier stuff and stuff that just basically sounded like straight ahead jazz and stuff that kind of sounded like R&B, and all of it was acid jazz somehow. The Grey Boys' particular variation on this was soul jazz. They do a lot of funky stuff too, as evidenced by the fact that Fred Wesley, trombonist for the JBs, the legend James Brown's legendary backing band, played with them on this record. So tight, so well delivered, so in the pocket. Their band leader is a guy named Carl Denson. He has been the Rolling Stones touring saxophonist for, I don't know, a couple decades probably. But that gives you a sense of, the musicianship, even on this debut record. They were really good even then. I think they've only gotten better over the years. But yeah, this is alternately soulful, funky, jazzy, always propulsive. Yeah, the Greyboys, very worth checking out. And I believe this was reissued in the last few years, so it might actually be available. Okay, second record. Switching genres. This is Entombed, fourth record from 1997. It's called To Ride, Shoot Straight, and Speak the Truth. So Entombed were one of the pioneers of Swedish death metal, in which they got famous for something called, it was called the Sunlight Sound, using the Japanese, the Boss HM2 pedal, which basically made your guitars sound kind of like a chainsaw, produced a particular sound. They made it a thing worldwide. By this record, though, they invented a subgenre called that people call death and roll, like heavy rock or death metal that kind of rocks. This is loose. This record kind of gives the impression that maybe they could have spent a little more time rehearsing it. There's sort of a feral, unhinged quality to a lot of the songs. You can detect, bits of probably like stoner riffs in there. There's a lot of like MC5 and the Stooges, but again, with that Swedish death metal sound. And their vocalist, LG Petrov, who had one of the best voices in all of heavy music, he's in fine form on this record. Entombed got, I don't know, they didn't get big exactly, but they apparently got big enough that at least for a time, they had a small plane with their name on the side of it. If you are curious what death metal and 70s rock and roll might sound like combined,
I was looking for some deep cuts,
Slash and burn.
Slash and burn.
Dead Air.
Dead Air's my band.
Actually talking about a record versus occult music.
Then the answer is no.
okay.
He's kind of a goofball. The rest is noise. Scattered, smothered, covered like a Waffle House breakfast.